Yeah. Hi, welcome everyone to the Q&A session with Varun Trikha, the director of Saatvin Khwaish, The Butterfly's Dream and the Wall. Uh, we welcome you to CAFF'21, the fourth edition of Cineville Annual Film Festival. The festival is aimed at film enthusiasts and aspiring filmmakers and students. We are glad to have Varun here with us. Varun Trikha is a filmmaker based in Delhi. He has an educational background in ethics from King's College London and creative documentary from SACAC Delhi. Through his films, Varun strives to discover, articulate, reveal, and express his subterranean realities in a distinct, poetic, and ethical voice. So, hi Varun, how are you?
Hello, I'm fine, and how are you?
Yeah, I am fine, Varun. Yeah. What's up with you right now? Working on any project as right now?
Yes. I'm working on a project which is in post-production right now. So it's in the editing. We're in the final stages of editing, so it's quite exhausting. I've been editing all day long.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to be here because it gives me a chance to refresh and reconnect to my film, Saatvin Khwaish.
Yeah, it's been 7 years for you, I guess.
Yes, it has been almost 7 years. I haven't watched the film in quite some time, but I don't need to. It's here because it was a very
Yeah.
special film for me.
Yeah.
So I remember it very well.
Okay. So I have a few questions about the film, the Saatvin Khwaish. So the first one will be, how did you become a part of this industry, and what is your motivation to make films like Saatvin Khwaish?
How did I become a filmmaker? Well, it happened very organically. I'm a very in that sense, I'm somebody who doesn't decide things. I like to go organically about things. So I was studying ethics, and that's when I started looking at cinema very seriously. And I think that's where it really started. I was sure that this is something that I would like to do. And Amar Kanwar, the filmmaker, puts it so beautifully that filmmaking is about um, finding aesthetic solutions to ethical problems. So I think it was something like that. I found this medium. I started researching, writing, and the more I did that, the more I got convinced that this is something that I would like to learn and engage with to find aesthetic solutions to a lot of ethical questions that I had in mind. So that's how really I became a filmmaker, a non-fiction filmmaker. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
What is your motivation to make films right now?
Um, with me, it starts with an idea. I have to have an idea. And it has to be personal, it has to be unique, it has to be mine. And then I look for a context. You start exploring that idea, you question it, you systemize it in some ways, and you find a context. So that's what my process is like. And for this film as well, it was very much the same. I had an idea that how is it possible that you can go to regular everyday public spaces and film it in a way that you kind of attribute a certain kind of desires to them which are in reality forbidden in those kind of spaces. Is it possible? So that was my idea, and I started exploring it, reading around this idea, and I knew about Rekhti poetry, so it kind of came to my rescue, and I found that little thing to contextualize my idea, and it just was fitting perfectly into it, and that was how I started really.
Okay. So your educational background was the main motive, I guess, for making films. It really helped you. Your MA in ethical leadership and your creative documentary of SACAC, I guess.
Yes, definitely. Because it was when I was studying ethics, then it was only then that I started looking at cinema very seriously. Um, it started there, and I was convinced that I wanted to um, learn the basic skills of how to make films. And I think I was very fortunate that I found SACAC because, it was the first program, first year
Yeah.
of the creative documentary course that I became a student of. It was 1 year long, and it was not a kind of classroom teaching. It was more like you become a filmmaker by doing it. So
Okay.
it was like a perfect situation, like a dream, where you're making films, but you have people who are guiding you, who are your mentors. Then you're getting to meet filmmakers, documentary filmmakers. You are able to exchange ideas with them, learn something new every single day while doing things. And I think I was very lucky because I did not want to go to a film school, spend 4 years. Um, I wanted something which is more like you're already a filmmaker and you have support. So it was something like that.
Okay. So, did you study about Vaikti poetry there in your ethics course or somewhere else?
Yes, I was writing a paper. I think it was Third Cinema in Women. Uh,
Hmm.
and I came across Rikti poetry, but it was something like I knew about it, I read about it, but that was about it. And suddenly in 2014, when I started exploring this idea of the film, I remembered it and I started re-looking at it. So that's how it started.
Okay. So, how did you connect it basically, Vaikti poetry and the? Did you have an idea before making the film that I'll make the film on the lines of Vaikti poetry, or did you just make a film and then connect Vaikti poetry later on?
No, my idea was actually there was another book that I had read. It's called Impossible Desires by Gayatri Gopinath, I think.
Hmm.
The film is about diasporic subjectivities of on some films, but what I was captivated by was one chapter. So that chapter was about the popular film Hum Aapke Hain Kaun. But
Okay.
what I was really captivated by was that the author, what she did was, without ridiculing the family relationships or portrayal of that in the film, she took that traditional space and within that she started imagining different kinds of desires, love between women, and so on, without ridiculing it. And she did not do it to imagine something which is not there, but simply to draw your attention to it. That why in this kind of space, only certain kind of desires are acceptable and talked about. Why not other
Hmm.
kind of desires? And
Yeah.
I was so fascinated by that idea, and it stayed with me. And I wondered whether I can whether I can use the film medium to explore this idea. And
Hmm.
Reiki poetry was something which gave me exactly that context, because if you look at Reiki poetry, the kind of the geography in it, the spaces that it talks about are public spaces, regular uh, places, but the power structure is overturned in the Reiki poetry. It's all about women. It's not so patriarchal. So it's the bazaars and the rooftops, fairs and festivals and alleyways and so on, regular public spaces, but it's all about desires of women. It's kind of overturning it to draw our attention to something which is seldom talked about in those spaces. So this was the idea, and this is how Reiki poetry came
So,
to my rescue.
could you explain what was the role of jinns in the film? That the jinns were real. You wrote about that in the film. Could you explain what the jinns were? Were they desires or were they the evil something thinking of a person? Could you explain that, please?
Mm. So how it happened was a lot of Reiki poetry has been lost, because
Yeah.
it was very explicit about desires, sex, and so on. So a lot of it was lost. And I thought, what if I take whatever has survived, read them,
Hmm.
thoroughly, and find cues if things that the poems talk about still exist in today's Delhi. So there were first thing was the public spaces. They still exist, right? So one can go to those public spaces and imagine this poetry. The second was I came across some poems in which women were kind of worshipping jinns.
Yeah.
And those jinns had names like Jinnan Hemia. In Islam, jinns are these, they're not gods, they are made of smokeless fire, like humans are made out of clay, and they live much longer than humans. And I thought, okay, this poetry has not survived. A lot of it has not survived. But
Hmm.
some poems have survived which talked about jinns.
Hmm.
Let's look for those jinns. And very interestingly, even today, there are some, rituals and practices in which those very same jinns are kind of worshipped. Um, People believe that you can pray to them as women, and you can, make a wish to them, and it will come true. So I like that as a concept, that in a way those genies are also survivors of Rekti. Even though a large chunk of this poetry is gone, these they have outlived them. So for me, it was an interesting. For me, they were descendants of this poetry that could not survive.
Okay. Uh, could you elaborate upon the role of the genders in the film, about the male and the female aspect of the film? Could you explain about that? Because the thing I read about Rekti poetry was that a male person used to write about the desires of a woman. So could you please
Hmm?
explain the role of genders in your film?
Yes. Well, that was something very, it was something which was at the heart of my idea, the gender politics of it.
Hmm.
So I just thought that, you have this poetry, which is about women. It talks about desires of women. Everything is about those women,
Yeah.
but written by men. And it is very telling of how, things are. Histories of women, they, especially back then, it was, almost forbidden. So those stories have not survived. But I thought, what about you take these poems? Yes, they are written by men, but
Hmm.
they're written about those women. The women that it talks about are the women who could not write their own poems because they were forbidden to write them. So within these poems, which are written by men, can you access those women, whose stories have not been told? Somewhere at some corner, those women exist in these
Hmm.
poems because it's
Yeah.
their stories. So how to retrieve that? And of course, who speaks for whom is a question that is very integral to this. Why should men, talk about desires of women and what they regarded as Begamati Zuba, language of women? So for me, it was really about retrieving those voices within this very patriarchal form of poetry, in a way.
Okay. Okay. So could you please tell us about the duration of the shoot? Because the film seems to be shot over a period of time, but I don't think it was shot over a period of time due to some shots. And could you please explain the barriers that you faced during shooting the film? Any problems or any financial issues?
Financial issues, not really, because
Yeah.
it was made as a part of my study. So
Okay.
we had the equipment given to us and all of that.
So it was funded by
Um,
your college only?
yes, yes. But they are so nice. We actually own these films, even though we are funded by them. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, um, the challenges. Number one challenge was, as a male filmmaker, how do you have access to an all women space?
Hmm.
That was something which was extremely challenging. We had a very short time to film. In fact, the film was shot in 5 days. That was all that we were given. So I had to really plan very well so that I can, manage to get the shots that I wanted to get. Um, there was even a time when, I had decided where I was going to film. It was in somebody's house, and the access was given and everything was fine. And on the day of shoot in the morning, the woman said, "You cannot film here. My husband has a problem with it." So it collapsed. Then you have to find an alternative. And this is how it is with documentary film shoots. So yeah, your first part of question was how long? It was 5 days of shoot, and I think 2 or 3 weeks for the edit. I think within a month we had to make this film.
Okay. It was part of your you had been given a time you have a month or so you had to make in the film, right?
Yes, so the shooting days were 5, and then I think around 3 weeks to edit it, to complete it.
Okay. Okay, I have a few questions from YouTube comments as well, so I'll post them. Yeah. Sparsh has asked, although we live in a secular country, we know how sensitive religion-related topics or issues can be. So how do you take care of this particular issue while writing and directing your films?
I want to share one episode. The film was shot, a large part of it was shot in Firoz Shah Kotla, where they believe that there are jinns in those alcoves and people come to write letters and so on. But a large number of visitors are Muslims. And one day, and it's always crowded on Thursdays. One day I went there for the shoot, and I was amazed to see that there are not many people around. That really confused me. I was wondering what's going on. And then I talked to the guard, and he said, well, because tomorrow is 15th of August. So today is 14th, and most Muslims in this area don't go out because, cops keep stopping them and there is so much security and all of that. And I found that so bizarre. Until then, I had not really thought of religion in context of this film, So that was a kind of, an eye-opening thing for me, that you have to look at religion within the context of this film as well. And in terms of aesthetics, how I dealt with it was the first time jinns are mentioned, instead of going to those caves, to that very Islamic structure, I go to a little, temple, a Hindu temple where women are dancing and they are, because it's the same thing, isn't it? They are praying and they are making a wish, they are expressing themselves, they are in joy, they're dancing and all of that. And in Rekhti poetry also, in its world, it's not Islamic poetry. It's very secular, as like our Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. So there are Hindu women, there are Muslim women, there are women who love other women, there are women who love other men, there are women who can't stand each other, but then there are women who will give their life for the other women. And religion is something that never comes in between them. And I wanted to maintain that in my representation of this poetry in this film.
Okay. I had a personal question as well. Could you please explain the cinematography of the film? Because as I saw in the film, you had many out of focus shots, plus you had a person not in the frame but speaking. Also, you did not have many shots of the person looking directly in the camera as well. So could you please explain that?
Firstly, it's my kind of personal taste as a filmmaker. I don't like when people look into the cameras, when they're asked to look into the camera to say something. I find it very robotic and very mechanical, because it's a camera, that it's a lens that they then start talking to. It's so inhuman. And as soon as you tell somebody, please look into the camera and talk, the dynamics change, your personal relationship with them change. Yes, sometimes it's very interesting when people are talking and suddenly they look into the camera on their own and say something. Those are very special moments. But whenever I interview, I never tell people to look in any direction. I just tell them, look wherever you want to look. And I like it when they're engaging with something. I don't like regular interviews because there's so much of power politics that you are somebody who has the right to ask them questions, and they are somebody who have to answer you looking into this machine. I don't like those kind of situations, so I try to avoid them. In terms of shot taking, the idea in my mind really was that the film is not a character-based film. I'm not looking to interview people and show their faces talking into the camera. The idea really was look for Rekti poetry, look for those jinnis, look for those desires, and that's why blurred shots. That's why, all those movements and so on. So you're looking for something, you're looking at a regular space, but you film it in a way that kind of shows you another reality of that space, you know.
Hmm.
So I was just trying to achieve that, try to create, not overturn its reality, but draw attention to something that you would otherwise not notice, So
Hmm.
that was my kind of philosophy in the shot taking for this film.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Also, could you please explain the title of the film, because it's a really simple one. Yet, I personally did not understand it. How was it in the connection with the seven Thursdays in the film, or is
No,
this no?
No, so these women write letters to the jinnis, just like women in Rekti poetry wrote letters to their jinnis. And what I did was I used to go to, and those letters that they write today, those women write to jinnis, actually the housekeeping staff just burns them, so they don't really they are not read by the jinnis in the night. That's what these women believe. So
Okay.
I found that very heartbreaking. So I started collecting those letters. I still have a lot of them because I did not want them to be burnt. And I started, so I had, a lot of letters. Many of them were in Hindi, Urdu, and so I started reading them. What was even more heartbreaking for me was, a woman is writing to a jinni. Jinni is not a god, it's not a human. So she can really say whatever are her innermost feelings, right? So I was very excited. What are they writing? What are they asking him? What are their wishes? But it was heartbreaking that it was all about their families. Please give my son this, please give my husband this, my daughter, my neighbors, my aunties, my uncles, and all of that. So they make 7 wishes. They believe that you have to go for 7 Thursdays so that your wish comes true. So in the end of the film, what I did was the woman reads out all the 6 wishes, and I end without her, uh,
Seven.
saying her 7th wish, and
Yeah.
leave it like that. Because for me, it's about, she asked for everybody, but she did not ask for anything for herself. And this is also this tells you something about, again, the gender politics of it. So for me, the 7th wish was that wish that those women could not make, just like those women who could not write their own poems.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I guess at least I'm done with my questions. I'll just go to the YouTube comments one last time. Then I guess we'll end the session here.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, Alakshindra has asked the amount of research that must have gone into making of this film. It makes it even fabulous. So, did you do the research from your by yourself, or was it included in your course as well? Then you developed upon the idea of that.
No, the research I had to do independently. So I started reading extensively. I met people who knew about the subject. For example, Ruth Vanita has written a book about Rekti. So I talked to her and I read her book, I don't know, maybe 5 times. Then there's Salim Kidwai in Lucknow. I went to Lucknow to talk to him and to get his perspective on it. And then there was a scholar in Delhi. And so a lot of people, Anand, who wrote a book about jinnis,
Hmm.
Anand Taneja, genealogy, I believe. So
Hmm.
that was my research, meeting those people, people who have worked on this topic, get their, take on things. Then trying to, the main research was really Rekti poems. So I cannot read Urdu script, but I found a divan in Old Delhi about Rekhti poems, but it was written in Urdu. So every day I would sit in a coffee shop with a man, Iqbal, who later became my friend, and he would just read the poems, and I will type them, and I managed to translate all of them. And then I would the main research really was reading them uh, hundreds of times and let it, take over your mind. Um, so yes, I want to share something, because I was, I was really reading so much, and I was also reading those letters which were addressed to the jinnis. One night I was sleeping. It was, just before going to bed, I had read those letters the women had written to the jinnis, and I went to sleep. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and I saw the door slightly opened. I'm not trying to scare you. Maybe I was sleeping. I saw it slightly open and I did not see anybody, but I felt the jinn has entered. Jinn Nanhe Mia has entered. But I felt so comfortable and I said, please, Jinn Nanhe Mia, join me. You must be tired. Please have a rest or something. And then I went back to bed. So no, I was not going crazy, but really I was reading those letters and those books and trying to get to the inner world of those stories.
Okay. So it was really fun talking to you with Varun. It was a really nice session. So I guess hope to see you in the festival more. We have our films on YouTube. We'll be streaming for the next 2 days. We hope to see you there. There are many films lined. We hope that you will see the film and give a review to us.
Yes, I would love to. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you. It was great. I was able to reconnect to my film because of you. So I'm very happy that we did this.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.